Josh, last night, while DeVarell Biggs was doing his thing, Bo Pelini was taking calls in his on the Sports Nightly radio show, and there was one fan, I'm sure you saw it, called in and kind of questioned some of his sideline demeanor and said not sure his players respond to him in that regard, and he thinks it could negatively impact how the refs view him. What are your thoughts on Pelini's sideline demeanor?
Well, I think that caller was probably 3 years too late.
Sure.
I think Bo is right. Every player that I've always talked to, and even every recruit, it's always I would run through a wall for Bo Pelini. And so, you know how it is. Some coaches, they get a bad rep for their sideline demeanor, and maybe it does make a ref tune them out a little quicker. I think in sports too, if a ref knows that, hey, this coach is going to be hard on him, maybe they're paying attention to the details a little bit more too. I don't get caught up into it much anymore, just because I've heard over the last year and a half from too many players that say they love Bo, and I've seen too many examples of where Bo walks into a living room of a recruit, and that recruit and his parents come away so impressed that they commit to Nebraska. And so I can't get caught up in that anymore. I don't think it's a big problem, but it's one of those things that if Bo Pelini struggles, it's always going to be one of those characteristics that can come up and be somewhat of an excuse for fans.
Do you feel like there's a lack of buzz or excitement about this weekend's game against Penn State?
Well, no, I think some Husker fans are taking it a little too lightly. And I'm having a little bit of a case of deja vu where last year they lose badly to Wisconsin on the road. They come back and win 3 straight, which that's right now what Nebraska's on, a 3-game winning streak, and then they lose to Northwestern at home. I think too many people are thinking about a Big Ten championship game or a Rose Bowl appearance right now, and I think you got to take Penn State seriously. I think they're a good football team as of this moment. There I go sound like both. They've won 6 out of the last 7. I think they're definitely rolling, and I feel like it's probably a football team that has something to play for right now themselves. It's kind of them against the world, and so they don't have a postseason to be playing for later in the year, and so every big game like this this is their bowl game, and so I think Nebraska fans overall are a little bit overlooking them. I don't know as far as the players. I think, hopefully they've learned from situations like Northwestern last year where you can't look ahead, you can't overlook anybody. But I think as far as Husker Nation, there's maybe a little bit of a missing buzz there just because I think so many people feel like they have the division wrapped up already.
You think it's a good matchup for Nebraska schematically, offense, in terms of what Penn State wants to do against Bo Pelini in that defense?
I think so. I think it's going to be a similar game to last week where you see the offense struggle at times, and then you see the offense also have some big plays. I don't expect it to be this big shootout. You take a look at last year's game, and I think there should be a little bit more scoring than that. But I think Nebraska can move the ball against Penn State, but at the same time, I think Penn State's defense is pretty solid, and so I think it's going to be probably be a close game, and I wouldn't say low scoring, but maybe high 20s.
Yeah.
This is The Drive on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Josh Harvey, our guest, Big Red Report and foxsports.com. Recruits visiting the game. I believe I heard Brian Munson say during Gaskins and Stevens, 5 visiting. Is that correct, Josh?
Yeah, there's 4 officials, and then there's one guy who already officially visited earlier in the year, but is coming back again because he's visited a couple schools. But I guess it's not a huge weekend. I think all 5 guys, they would really, really like, a couple junior college products especially. But this time of year, it's sometimes tough to get guys in because of football playoffs and the high school level. So many of these guys, their coaches don't want them leaving during the postseason. And so that's why I think it's a bit of a smaller weekend. I wouldn't be that surprised if there's a few more next weekend.
Josh, naturally, when someone breaks records, the conversation of where they place and should be in history comes up. And talking about Taylor Martinez, obviously, and where he factors in all-time quarterbacks at Nebraska. Obviously, I think it's a little premature for that conversation. I mean, he has some more football this year and then has an entire season next year. I thought Tommy Frazier said it best. He talked about how the thing that Taylor's missing is He hasn't won anything of substance with no conference title, no bowl wins, anything like that. And I thought the biggest thing he talked about was the thing that Taylor lacks that some of these other greats lack didn't lack is that you knew what you were going to get every single game out of Scott Frost and out of Tommy Frazier and Eric Crouch. You don't know what you're going to get out of Taylor Martinez. Would you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, because we've seen it in situations even this year where Taylor's old habits and old scary moments can kind of creep up, and he can throw that 3-interception game. And here's the thing: if he doesn't have that magical comeback last week against Michigan State, what's one of the biggest storylines coming out of that weekend was how poorly Taylor Martinez played. And so, yeah, I definitely kind of agree with Tommy. I still do think, though, that the hardware is the biggest thing. I think if he had a conference championship or had a BCS win, that fans would already be kind of ranking him right up there. But that's just not the case. But like you said, there's still a long ways to go. We still have a year and a half with this kid, so it probably is a little too early. I think I have somewhat of a different perspective because I didn't grow up here. I didn't get to see those guys play week in and week out. It was those moments when they were playing in those big time games. I wouldn't put Taylor in a top 5 right now.
No.
I'd probably even struggle to put him in a top 8 or so. But he's got a long ways to go. And he has an opportunity, especially if you look at the schedule next year, to do some big things going forward. And he's going to put some of those records probably out of reach for at least a long time. And so I think he definitely has a chance to climb the ranks.
How would you assess Nebraska's offensive line play in 2012?
Say that again?
How would you assess Nebraska's offensive line in 2012?
A lot of people want to jump on them, but it's hard for me to do that when you're that high in the nation and running. And I know Taylor Martinez has definitely had some blindsided hits, and some of his turnover woes haven't necessarily been on him. It's hard to hold on to the football when you're being blindsided from behind. I think when you look at them as a rushing team, the offensive line has been performing great. I think when it comes to the pass, they could definitely improve. But overall, I would have to give them maybe a B to a high B plus, just because. You can't put up that many yards in your offense and not have a decent offensive line. I know Taylor Martinez is a great scrambler, but nobody's that great. He's got to get some holes. Amir Abdullah's got to get some holes. And when you go back and you really watch those games, some of the driving lanes that they have to work with in there are just crazy. And so I don't think the offensive line has been doing as bad as some people necessarily want to say they have been.
Josh, when I look at this offense, it's pretty amazing where I would have a tough time picking just one guy that has totally exceeded expectations. I think you could look at Taylor Martinez for one, Amir Abdullah, Kenny Bell, Quincy Enunwa. If you had to pick one guy in offense that has impressed you the most or exceeded expectations more than you anticipated, who would it be?
That's a tough call. I would probably have to go I would have to probably go with Amir because I think we thought Taylor Martinez would be improved. We didn't know how much. That's a really tough question. I just think that Amir Abdullah was put in such a tough situation to have to replace Rex Burkhead and to have to replace that type of load. And obviously, I wonder about the depth behind him just because they haven't been necessarily quick to go to Braylon Hurd. They haven't necessarily been quick to go to Amani Cross. And so he knows that he's the guy with Burkhead out, and I think he's done a really nice job in a tough situation, kind of stepping up and replacing a guy that everybody was so excited to see what he could do his senior year. And he was another guy that you look as far as where he would rank on the all-time running backs level. Rex Burkhead, if he would have had just the same kind of season as he was last year, yardage-wise, he would have been the second all-time leading rusher in Nebraska history. And so for Abdullah to have to come in and replace a guy like I think he's done a wonderful job when a running back's carrying the ball over 5 yards a carry, he's doing some good things. And so for that to be the case, I would have to go with Abdullah.
I feel like I would go with Taylor Martinez just from the fact that I never thought, because he's never really done it before, I didn't think he would ever be able to consistently make big throws with the game on the line late in ball games, and he's done that a couple of times this year.
Yeah, you're definitely right. I think there's a difference looking different early in a game and doing, being an improved quarterback compared to being an improved quarterback with 1:20 left on the clock.
Right.
So I definitely think you're right there. But it's been a situation where the last couple of years, especially in the spring, his coaches and his teammates had his back so much you had to think to yourself, well, he's got to be improved. But you're definitely right. The ice that he has in his veins late in the game has been very, very impressive. And if you would have told somebody this a year ago that he would be doing these type of things late in the game, nobody would believe you.
No.
What's your gut telling you for Saturday, Josh? Who's going to win this one?
I'm liking Nebraska in this. I think at home with so much to play for, I think this crew. It's hard because you look at them over the last couple of years, and they've had moments where this is supposed to be a win, and for some reason they don't get it done, and there's a lack of focus there or whatnot. But I think this week it seems like they're really clicking, even though they've had their struggles. To turn over the ball that many times against Michigan State on the road and still come out with a win, you got to be doing definitely some things right along the way. And so I like Nebraska in this one, and I really honestly believe that they win this one. The next 2 weeks are pretty easy wins, and they'll be playing in a Big Ten title game.
Josh Harvey, Big Red Report, foxsports.com. Well, I mean, book your ticket to Indy then, Josh.
What was that?
I said book your ticket to Indianapolis
Yeah,
then.
if they win this weekend, I will definitely be strongly considering it.
All
Nice.
right. Hey, thanks so much for your time, Josh.
Not a problem, guys. Talk to you later.
Here's the other thing on that. This is just a feeling I get if things went as bad as they possibly could. I hear so many people, especially Dirk Chatelain, saying, "Well, Nebraska, they're going to beat. They can afford a loss because Michigan will lose to Ohio State." Not so fast. Ohio State, they're a better team. It's a rivalry game. Michigan could win that game. Probably not. Michigan beats Ohio State. Nebraska loses in Iowa City. Can you just imagine that rivalry?
Nuts.
Just that place is going bonkers. They're one big win of the whole year. I doubt it'll happen, but I'm just saying that'd be worst case scenario.
I'm with you. There's still a lot of football to be played.
So
I think Dirk and his Mad Chatter put it like 80 to 90% that Nebraska makes it to Indy. And, on paper, I guess that'd be true. Like if you would do a computer simulation for the rest of the year, Nebraska would go to Indianapolis.
Yeah.
But you got to play the game
That's
still.
right.
And you still got to go out there and do it. And maybe I'm totally in the minority in this, but I never thought that I would ever see the day where Taylor Martinez late in a game would be chilling in the pocket and picking people apart to win. Did you ever?
No, absolutely not.
I never, ever thought that would happen. So
call it clutch, call it an isolated incident, one big fourth down play. He was 16 to 36 for 160 yards.
But he did it against Northwestern.
That's true.
That's
true.
He made big throws in the second half against Wisconsin.
Michigan State's got a great defense, too.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of outside of last year's Ohio State game, when did Taylor Martinez ever make a big throw in a second half of a game?
Gosh. I know
I'm talking
wow.
Big time throw.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're right.
It's never happened.
It doesn't happen.
People, do you understand? This is the same guy that was like, everybody, there was a collective gasp every time this dude was in the pocket a year ago.
Nerves. Yeah, a lot of people were nervous. Now, I'm not as nervous. I'm still cautious, though. I'm like, oh, great, here we go.
He's making big-time throws and big-time decisions on the road with the game on the line. I never thought I'd see the day.
Wine tasting, Kevin Meyer coming up next. It is the